Sophie, you definitely have a green theme today. Green toque, green hoodie, green hair, green drink.
I want a lot of green stuff.
Do you?
Yeah, it's my favorite color.
It's a nice color. I don't have a lot of green. I don't know why.
No, it's very earthy. I like it.
It's a very like calming and relaxing
Yeah.
color to have around you, hey?
And now the bracelet is green too.
Oh, the bracelet's green, yeah. You're very color coordinated. You gotta know how to accessorize, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's pretty interesting. I don't know if there's any science behind this, but it's interesting how like the colors that are very calming to people, like blue and green and that, are colors that like come from the natural world. Like grass and trees are green and the sky is usually blue. It's very interesting that like those are the major colors of Earth and those are the ones that make us feel good, which is good morning. I don't
Like something we're used to.
like
'Cause it's
evolutionarily, yeah, maybe. I don't know that there's any science to that, but I wonder about it.
I bet there is. Because you know how people say like foods that are like red or something look more appetizing to people than foods that are like green.
Well, they are the ones that are red are usually ripe, right? And those ones have the most energy and calories, right? Because their fibrous carbs have converted to sugary carbs. That might be part of it. That might be part of that. But yeah, it's interesting to think. It's interesting to think. Maybe that's something that's hardwired. We said not much is, but maybe that's something that we're sort of genetically tuned to respond to. I mean, nobody's comforted by orange. I was thinking about red as like an alarming color. I wasn't thinking of ripe fruits, but you know, and red tends to make people, you know, on edge or whatever. But I wonder if it's a blood thing, you know, like if you see a lot of red, like you're in trouble, you're bleeding, right?
Yeah, but people also use red as like a happy, not happy, but like when you're celebrating something, you're like the decorations, they're always like red.
Yeah, and it is the color of love, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know the sort of science of how people respond to color, but it's interesting to think about. I think anyway. I think it's interesting to think about. Okay, shall we begin? All right, here we go. Right. Nope, nothing happened. Hang on. Oh, that's not good. Why is that not? Oh, I see what I did. I see what I did. Can I do this, I wonder? Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Friday. I'm not sure if you could hear me or not. I kind of had my Ecamm settings a little bit screwed up. So I'm not sure if you heard that conversation. We were just talking about colors, but if you didn't, that's okay too. Yeah, so good morning. Welcome to Friday, everybody's favorite day of the week. Any big weekend plans? Nothing exciting? Good morning. Big weekend plans? No. I don't have big weekend plans either. It's hard to have big weekend plans when we're all not supposed to go anywhere, right? So it's tough. But I hope you'll all have some kind of fun. Maybe get outside, try and get some fresh air. Fresh air is good for you, even if you go for a walk. That's good. Put in your earphones and just dance along. No, don't. I'm not going to dance either. Nobody wants to see that. Let's see. Let's see who's here. Nicole's here. Good morning, Nicole. Simrat is here. Good morning, Simrat. Blake is here. Good morning, Blake. Abby's here. Hello, Abby. Adol's here. Good morning to you, sir. And Ryan is here. Click. Good morning. And Hamed, who I don't really know, is here, but good morning to you. And Ryan is here. Good morning, Ryan. So let's pick up where we left off here yesterday. Let's pick up where we left off yesterday. All right, you with me? Good morning, Scotty. You with me back there, girls? Nasra and Sophie, are you with me? You seem like you're on another topic. I'm sure you were talking about social justice, right? Yeah, of course. Okay. Just checking. Yesterday we were talking about oppression, right? And we said it was kind of a system of principles and policies and laws and social messages and things people say, all of these things that are kind of circulating through society, and they work together in order to advantage some groups and disadvantage others, okay? And I didn't talk about it yesterday, or I didn't mention it yesterday, but oppression is sometimes more difficult to see than you might think. And so that's why a week or so ago we were talking about flat Earth, right? And the idea that, you know, even though you look outside and you see the world as flat, it's actually different. It's actually a ball, right? And oppression is kind of similar in that sometimes it is operating, but it is difficult to see, right? You have to kind of dig. You have to sort of look critically at things, because sometimes oppression is very clear, right? If you are talking about slavery or apartheid in South Africa, yeah, that's pretty clear. That's pretty clear oppression, right? But sometimes it's a little more insidious, right? It's a little more hidden. It's a little more difficult to determine. And so that's kind of what I want to focus on. And in this class, I tend to steer away from stuff like that because, you know, like the things like, you know, the Holocaust, or things like, you know, apartheid in South Africa, or slavery in southern United States. Those are all very clear examples of, you know, heavy inequality between groups, right? But I also think that because we can so intuitively understand that, oh my gosh, this is really bad, it's probably not a good idea to spend too much time on that. It's a better idea to spend time on the things that are more nuanced and more subtle, the things that are harder to understand. Most people can look at the history of the Holocaust and say, holy cow, this is awful and terrible, right? Most people can kind of see that. And so this is the stuff that's a little more difficult to see, and I think maybe a little more within our kind of realm of experience, maybe. But if you take History 12 with me, we'll definitely talk about the Holocaust, if you really want to. There's actually a course in BC in high school called Genocide Studies. And so you could take a whole course on genocide, which seems to me really dark. I feel like it would be tough to talk about genocide for 13 weeks. I feel like I'd really need like some antidepressants after that. Anyway, that's kind of a tangent. So, yes?
Society-wise, what is the difference between oppression and suppression?
Suppression?
Suppression, oppression.
Right. Well, we've said oppression here describes kind of a relationship between social groups where one group has power and they kind of create society in a way that benefits them and disadvantages the other group, right? When you suppress something, it's like you push it down, right? You hold it down. And so if you want to suppress free speech, you try to create a condition where people can't express their views, right? And so I don't know that suppression has some kind of official definition as oppression. So suppression is kind of a thing that, yeah, it's different, like they're different definitions. And I think suppression, like you can suppress certain things. Does that make sense? Mulder's looking at me like, what?
Is that the way Canadians say it?
No, I'm kind of, yeah, I'm emphasizing it to have the difference. So yeah, we would just say suppression. Yeah, we wouldn't say suppression. Sorry. You were thinking like, what is with these Canadians and their pronunciation, right? Yeah, sorry, I was just emphasizing the difference. Yeah, so suppression is just to kind of push something down or to keep it in check. Although if you want to sound really smart, say suppression. No, don't do that. People will look at you just like Mulder looked at me, and rightly so. So the group that has power and is sort of in control of society is the dominant group, and minoritized groups are the ones that are disadvantaged. Yesterday we talked about stereotypes and prejudice and discrimination, and I think that was good because often people mix these things up when they're talking kind of in regular discourse, or whether they're talking on social media. Sometimes people don't quite know what they're talking about, sometimes they do. But it's a good idea for us to separate things out, right? Stereotype where, we have ideas about what a certain group of people or a certain group of animals are like, because we were talking about dogs yesterday. And we said that generally stereotypes don't have a strong emotional feeling or judgment attached to them, right? And so here, Canadians say "eh" all the time. That's what we say, eh? It's not, you probably don't have a very strong feeling about that. You might think, haha, that's kind of silly. But you don't think that Canadians are good or bad because of it, right? But prejudice is a little different, right? Prejudice is this kind of learned judgment we have towards people based on the social group that they belong to. And so sometimes those emotions and judgments can be positive. Sometimes they can be negative, right? And we said discrimination happens where you act upon that prejudicial feeling that you have. And sometimes you can positively discriminate. Sometimes you can negatively discriminate, right? So the example of the dog, I think, illustrated this quite well, or at least I hope it did. When I asked you, what do we know about dogs? You gave me all kinds of stereotypical answers about dogs. They're fun and playful and loyal and happy and, fun to play fetch with and things like that. And those are all true. But there's other stereotypes too, that dogs can be vicious, right? And they can be scary and they bark at you and sometimes they bite, right? They can be, they can be frightening animals if they're not trained or socialized correctly, right? And so we have all of these stereotypes circulating around, but kind of the ones that we remember and the ones that we internalize often have to do with what we've learned from our family and our personal experience, right? And so lots of us in here said we love dogs, right? And I have a cat, but I do too. When I was 4 years old, we moved from Montreal, where I was born, to Edmonton, where I was raised. And when we were in Montreal, we stayed with my aunt and uncle for a little while. And my aunt and uncle had a dog, a big black Labrador retriever. And the dog was like twice the size of me at the time. But it was great. I loved that dog. And so, I kind of, from almost my various earliest memories, I remember a dog and, the dog being good, it being a good dog, right? And so I have a lot of positive prejudice towards dogs. I like dogs. But also, depending on your background and how you were raised and your earlier experiences, and maybe even where you come from in the world, right? Some places have a lot of stray dogs that are not very nice, right? We don't really have that here in Canada. There's not a lot of stray dogs running around, but other places in the world do have that. And so you might have a negative prejudice towards dogs, and that might lead you to discriminate one way or the other, right? And so I would positively discriminate against this dog and say, hey, my friend calls me, yeah, come on over and bring the dog. Do you want to name this dog? What do you want to call this dog? Max? Okay, here's Max. Yeah, bring Max too. I love Max. I love seeing Max. Bring him over, right? Or I could negatively discriminate and say, you know what, I don't like dogs. They make me nervous. I'm scared of them. Don't bring Max. He's not welcome. I'm not opening the door if you bring him, right? So I can discriminate based on my prejudices, and my prejudices are based on the stereotypes that I've learned, and to some degree my past experience as well, right? And some of us have good past experiences with dogs, and some of us have bad ones, unfortunately. And sometimes the bad ones are hard to shake, right? Especially if you're frightened, right? If you're frightened of dogs, it's hard to get over that, right? And I get that. Some of them are big and, this guy would be scary, right? If he was barking at you and angry and showing his teeth, yeah, I'd be intimidated. I love dogs, but I would be I'd be pretty nervous, right? He's a serious dog, right? So I was hoping to kind of draw some lines between stereotype and prejudice and discrimination with that example. Oh, shoot. We didn't finish talking about those questions from yesterday, did we? No. Okay, hang on one second. Let me just, I'm going to just jump back to that. There we go. Where was it? I think it was before this. There we go. That was yesterday's questions. Okay. So stereotype, prejudice. Oh yeah, we were talking about the experiment in the classroom. And so what was this experiment in the classroom? Scotty, help me out with this one. There was an experiment in the classroom in Jane Elliott's class. What happened?
Well, they conducted a test between brown-eyed and blue-eyed children.
Mm-hmm.
And the results show that the brown-eyed children are a lot smarter than blue-eyed counterparts.
It did appear that way, although we all know that blue-eyed kids are much smarter. No, we don't. It did appear that way, right? But what was really going on? What had really happened? What had really happened in this class? Did brown-eyed kids just get smarter? No. But what happened?
They felt like they were stupid, so they performed the same way that they thought they would.
Who did?
Blue-eyed.
Right. And wherever did they get that idea?
Teacher.
Yeah. So an agent of socialization, Jane Elliott, the teacher, an agent of socialization, started circulating a social message saying brown-eyed kids were smarter and better behaved and blue-eyed kids were not so smart and not, they weren't as good kids, right? So she starts circulating these messages, and then these kids start to act them out unconsciously, right? The brown-eyed kids start to feel that, yeah, I'm smart, I can do this, I'm better. And again, kind of subconsciously, they start doing this, and then they perform better, right? And the same thing with the blue-eyed kids. They start to feel, oh, yeah, teacher says we're not very smart. And they start doing worse, right? They absorb that message, and then they start acting on it. And again, these are kids, right? So they're probably not being super critical of the information that they're being given. They're just kind of absorbing it and acting upon it, right? And again, it's very interesting that the brown-eyed kids go along with it, because why wouldn't you, right? This is a good thing, right? It's like, yeah, yes I am. But the blue-eyed kids do as well, and this isn't a social message that benefits them in any way, but they still go along with it, right? And so again, we could dismiss this and say, well, it's a bunch of kids, what do they know? But these kids are human beings, right? They're Homo sapiens, and so they're telling us a little bit something about how we are, right, and how our brains work, even if their brains are not fully grown yet. Why do stereotypes remain so stable over time? There was a few things they suggested in this article. Why do stereotypes they're just hard to get rid of, they're hard to go away? One interesting one, actually, that I'll bring up here is the stereotype about Jewish people. So what do we, quote unquote, know about Jewish people? What's the stereotype? What is it? Don't know?
They like money.
Yeah. There's this stereotype that Jewish people really like money, or are obsessed with money, or are somehow good or talented with money, right? There's this kind of money stereotype that is attached to it. And that stereotype goes back hundreds of years. Okay? I think it goes all the way back to, is it medieval or Renaissance Europe? And so there was a time, and again, my medieval history is a little questionable. But the idea was that the Catholic Church, who was very powerful at the time, they kind of made it illegal for, you couldn't lend money to other Christians and make a profit off it. You weren't allowed to sort of charge them interest. That wasn't kosher with God kind of thing. So the church kind of made this rule. And so the Christians got out of the money lending business because you couldn't make any money lending people money if you couldn't charge interest. But Jewish people who were living in Europe at the time, they had no such rule to follow. And so they kind of moved into the money lending business because they were really the only people who were able to provide that service. And so, yeah, they started lending money to people and setting up businesses. And yeah, they made money and some of them got rich off it. But that stereotype almost starts there. And so it's hundreds of years old. And whether money or how you handle your money, whether that's a cultural value is another story. But the stereotype goes back hundreds of years, right? And people's suspicion of Jewish people goes back that far as well. And so that's been a tough stereotype to shake, right? And even nowadays we know it, right? We know that stereotype, even though it might be 600 years old. Has anyone read The Merchant of Venice by William Shakespeare? Merchant of Venice. You may read it in sort of grade 12 English if you took it, or maybe a little bit later. Maybe not. There's lots of Shakespeares out there. But in The Merchant of Venice, there is a character called Shylock. And Shylock is a Jewish moneylender in Venice. And he's very kind of stereotypically Jewish according to those negative stereotypes. And so, again, that's one that has been hard to shake, but it's been around for a really long time, right? It goes way, way back. But why do they say stereotypes remain stable over time? Okay, we need stereotypes for life. How so?
Like when home to watch a movie like Mean Girls,
Yeah.
if there was no stereotype, you can understand what's going on in this movie more.
Right. And so the comment is, it's like Mean Girls, right? If we don't really know the stereotypes, a lot of the movie doesn't make sense, right? The movie kind of relies on us understanding stereotypes about Americans, about high schools, about the social stratification in high schools. It kind of relies on us knowing that stuff. And if we know it, then the movie makes more sense, right? But I might extend it to our entire lives, right? That, it's useful for us to kind of know what people are like, right? It's, when we meet people, indeed we have to figure them out as individuals, but before we meet them, we do try to figure them out, right? We look at, their age, their sex, their gender, how they're dressed, how they behave, and we kind of form a little bit of a mental picture of who they might be. And maybe we don't judge them, right? Maybe we don't say, oh, what a loser or whatever. Maybe we don't judge this person, but we do try to figure them out, do we not? Do you do that when you, like first day of class, you come in, you sit down, and you kind of look around and you kind of say, okay, who are these people, right? And maybe most kind of importantly, who's the teacher, right? What's this guy like? What am I in for? Should I drop this class, right? And so most people didn't drop this class, so I'm going to take that as a vote of approval, or maybe you have to take it. Either way, I don't need to know. But that's what you do, right? You kind of look at them and you're like, how's this going to go? And I've definitely done it at university. I've definitely got into classes. First day of university, I'm looking at the syllabus and I'm looking at the prof and going, what are we in for here, right? And do I get a good feeling? And in university, I've dropped classes because of it. Like I've listened to the prof for an hour and I'm like, I don't like where this is going. And I've switched classes. And so I think we do it, right? It's helpful for us in life in terms of navigating our way and understanding people and figuring out maybe, who we might want to, ask if the SkyTrain is going the right way, like who might be safe to ask and who looks a little weird and maybe I won't ask them, right? This is a kind of a useful skill, right? And so again, we don't want to go too far and, just stereotype people and, have prejudices against them. But I think it's natural to kind of look at people and just try and figure out a little bit about who they are before we interact with them, right? I think that's a normal part of human interaction. Why else do they remain stable? Scotty, help me out here. I desperately need your help. Why do stereotypes remain stable? We can help Scotty too, but why do they remain stable?
People like to keep their stereotypes.
People like to?
Keep their stereotypes.
Why do they like to keep them?
For what I believe in, if I recall correctly, one will have an idea of a stereotype about a group of people, and then they transfer to the next people, and so basically one people shares the information about a stereotype to another, and then it'll keep going.
Right? So often we pass on those stereotypes to others, right? Particularly if, we're parents or teachers or something. We're agents of socialization, right? So we very easily pass those things on. Why else?
I feel like because there's enough people in like a certain group that feeds into the stereotype to keep it going.
Right. So
Yeah.
so a lot of stereotypes have a grain of truth to them, right? So there's a stereotype of Canadians being polite, and are a lot of them polite? A lot of them are, right? So there's enough to kind of keep it going, right? To sort of keep you kind of confirming that belief, right? Are all Canadians polite? No, right? Some of them are jerks, right? Unfortunately, yes.
Can you say stereotypes are related to the culture? The Jewish people, Canadian.
Sure. Well, and that's the thing. Stereotypes can be related to anything, right? So we can relate them to certain races or ethnicities. We can relate them to certain religions. We can relate them to certain countries. There are stereotypes about women. There are stereotypes about men. This is a lot of what comedians do, right? They play with the stereotypes between men and women, like they're up there with the microphone and they're like, oh, you know how women are, blah, blah, blah. And they make a joke about it, right? And so they really lean on those stereotypes and play with them in order to get a laugh, right? And so, yeah, you can have stereotypes about any group of people, right? Lots of Westerners have stereotypes about Muslims and that all Muslims are very strict, fundamentalist Muslims, right? And again, some of the Muslims that we see in popular culture, in movies, or sometimes in the news, if there's a terrorist act somewhere, that reinforces that stereotype. But, there's a tiny percentage of super hardcore Muslims over here, and then there's lots of other people who are, good people who are just practicing their faith and getting on with their lives, right? But there is that stereotype, and it's reinforced by some of the movies and things we see in the news sometimes, right?
So movies and books mean stereotypes, right?
Sometimes they okay. The question is that movies and books kind of create stereotypes, and I think sometimes they reinforce the stereotypes that already exist, and then sometimes they try to give you the reverse, right? And so let's look at Mean Girls for a second. So Damien, who's too gay to function apparently, he's very stereotypically gay, right? So in terms of a homosexual character, he's kind of girly, and he's obsessed with like hand creams and stuff like that, and fashion, right? He's like, oh, should I burn that lady's outfit, right? He's kind of very superficial. very into feminine stuff and fashion, and he wears pink and is very stereotypically gay, right? And so that's kind of used to immediately identify his character, but also it's for laughs in a few cases too. And whether it's funny is another question, but it's for laughs. But then think about Kevin G. Kevin Napur, the captain of the Mathletes. He's someone who you have a stereotype about who the captain of the Mathletes would be, like a super nerdy, awkward guy. But Kevin G's not that, right? He's kind of, and whether he's cool or not is another question, but he's trying to be cool, and he seems to be pulling it off, right? He's like, damn, and he's doing a rap, and he's not who you would expect, right? And so he's going the opposite way of the stereotype, and they're getting laughs that way, right? So sometimes, movies can do different things. They can really play into the stereotype and just give you what you expect, or they can play with it and say, I know who you expect the captain of the Mathletes to be, but here's Kevin G. Oh, that rhymes. Sometimes movies do two different things, right?
And also stereotypes about Kevin G is a stereotype because he's a nerd but not really like the smart cheerleader. It's like, whoa. So that's a stereotype.
It's kind of the opposite, right? It's the opposite, which can also be, I don't know if it's stereotypical, but it's like maybe we're just used to movies like giving us, a character who you think you know who they're going to be, but then they're the opposite, or they're different in a way that you don't expect, right? And that's because that's interesting, right? Damien's funny, right, in the movie, but there's not that much that's interesting about him, right? Because again, he's very, what do you call it? He's a flat character, right? There's not that much to him, right? And again, it's not his movie, it's the girl's movie. But he's a flat character in this case. But other characters are a little more interesting because they have something that sets them apart. And I would say Kevin G is more interesting than Damien because he's not what you would expect, right? He's different, right? He breaks the stereotype. The other thing I should point out here is something called confirmation bias. Do you know what that is? Confirmation bias?
Guessing is when you see a stereotype, it just reinforces the stereotype in your head. So it's hard to see people in a normal way.
Yeah. So Mulder says it's like it's when you see people who confirm your stereotype, it kind of sticks, right? And the more times you see it, the stronger it becomes. And this is actually a bigger thing. This is kind of a function of how human brains work. We are all prone to something called confirmation bias. And so our brains tend to work in a way that we seek out and find information that confirms what we already believe, and then we remember it, right? And when we see things that don't align with what we already believe, we tend to ignore or forget them. Okay? And so this is the case. And so if let's say the dog prejudice, right? If you really like dogs and you have a positive prejudice toward dogs, you're going to see lots of good dogs, right? And you're going to remember those good dogs. And you might encounter a bad dog, right? You might encounter a barky one or an aggressive one, and you might say, oh my gosh, that dog is out of control. They didn't socialize that dog properly. Yikes, right? But then you kind of forget about it, right? It doesn't change your stereotype of dogs, yet every time you meet a good dog, it reinforces the belief you already have. And again, people do this as well with other beliefs, political beliefs. They tend to read articles in the newspaper that confirm what they already believe. And ones that don't confirm it, they tend to ignore them, right? They're like, oh yeah, whatever, I don't want to read that. And the reason you don't want to read it is because it conflicts with what you already believe, right? And things like Facebook and Instagram, things that have algorithms or AI that is giving you more of what you've already looked for, that makes it worse, because then all of the stories that come up in your feed or things that kind of, cookies that get stored in your computer, those are all giving you things that you've already looked at and read. So your brain is wired to seek out things that confirm what you already believe, and then the algorithms are doing the same thing. They're just feeding you what you already believe and know. So it becomes really difficult for people to try to see all sides of an issue and understand it, because our brains are wired to only pay attention to what we already believe, and then our tech is actually doing the same thing, right? Which is dangerous, and that's how you get people, believing in QAnon and all kinds of things, because that's all they're hearing and seeing, right? And it seems like their whole world is taken up by this, but really most of us are, we read an article and we're like, this is crazy, right? All right, so confirmation bias is an issue, and also the exception to the rule, right? Most people, when they have stereotypes, they don't believe that 100% of people or dogs are like that, right? So Canadians are polite. Stereotype? Yes. Is it probably mostly true? More or less, right? Most of us are pretty nice, reasonably nice people, reasonably polite. Is every Canadian polite? No. But we know that. So when we meet a Canadian who's a jerk, it doesn't change our stereotype, right? Because it's like, oh, he or she, they're the exception, right? Oh, they're just an exception. But it doesn't change my mind, right? And so that happens a lot, right? The exception proves the rule. We know that 100% of Canadians are not polite, and so when we meet one who's not polite, it's like, oh yeah, he's a bad day, he's a bad apple. Sometimes people are jerks, right? That's just how it is, right? So again, it doesn't change our stereotypes. So again, these stereotypes are circulated in society. We see them in movies and in books. We see them sometimes in the news. And our brains and our algorithms are wired to keep feeding us the things that we already believe. And so it's really hard to shift these ideas. And again, that stereotype about Jewish people has not shifted for hundreds of years, right? That's a long time. There's 4 functions of prejudice. What were they? By the way, in sociology, this is a functionalist approach. So the idea here is that if something exists in society, it must serve a function. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist. So even things like racism and poverty, a functionalist would say there must be some reason for that. It must be benefiting someone in order to exist. If it didn't benefit anyone, it wouldn't exist. So this is saying prejudice has a use, and it doesn't have to be a good use, and it doesn't have to benefit everyone, but what are the uses of prejudice? What does it do? What does it do? There's 4. There's a something function, a something else function, a third thing function, and the last thing function. Hint, right? Big hint. But what is it? Or what are they? What's that? What is it? What? No. What's
Knowledge function.
knowledge function? What does that mean?
Means like by proving a stereotype, you feel like you know the place that you're living in.
Right. So we maintain stereotypes so that we know the world around us, so that we understand the world around us, right? That's helpful, right? Do you want to understand the world around you as you walk through it? Yeah. And it's actually scary to walk through a world where you don't understand anything, right? That's weird, right? Are you thinking of something specific, Nasra? Or are you just agreeing in general? Okay. Yeah, it's scary to walk through a world where you don't understand anything, right? The first time I went to Russia, I spoke no Russian. I couldn't read any Russian. It was a weird experience. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what store was what or what street was what, and right? So you're all, yeah, it's confusing, right? So knowledge function. We want to know about the world. What's the second one? What's the second one? I can wait a long time. They pay me by the hour. What's that?
Symbol racism and sexism is
I think you should look it up. Mulder,
Adjust the function.
what's that?
Adjust the function.
What does that mean?
That means when you agree with a stereotype, people tend to reward you, and if you disagree, they will punish you.
Right. So this is kind of a social norms thing, right? So we have values and beliefs in society. We tend to enforce social norms and social rules. And some of those have to do with social beliefs and expressing them as well, right? So when you come out and, on social media and you put an Instagram post saying, Black Lives Matter, I support them fully, racism is bad, this has to end, right? You're probably going to get a lot of thumbs up, right? People are going to react and say thumbs up and applause emoji and all kinds of things because you're expressing a value that people agree with, right? And so when you say the same thing, they're like, yeah, right? Thumbs up, applause, 100%, people will react, right? So you'll be rewarded for expressing values that are in line with society, right? I take a little bit of, punishment because here in Vancouver, we have the hockey team, the Vancouver Canucks. And when I tell people I cheer for the Edmonton Oilers, people look at me and they're like, why? Which is a legitimate question if you've seen the Oilers play. But again, I'm supposed to express that I cheer for the Vancouver Canucks. But when I don't, people are like, oh, well, whatever. They kind of punish me a little bit, right? So yeah, we try to get people to share the same values, and when they express different ones, sometimes we socially punish them, right? What's the third one? Not Mulder this time. He's done his job. Take a break. Just look it up. Just look it up. It's right there. I've given it to you. I've gift wrapped it to you. What's the third one? Value expressive function. What does that mean? Expressing values.
We express our self-esteem or something?
We express ourselves?
Through attitudes, we achieve self-expression.
Right. So part of who we are, part of our identity is our beliefs, right, and our values. And so when you post that thing that Black Lives Matter, I support it, racism is bad, we have to end this, hashtag this, hashtag that. When you post that, you're expressing a piece of yourself, right? You're expressing what you feel and what you believe to be true to the world. And so that's part of you expressing your identity, right? So in expressing your values, you're kind of saying and confirming who you are as a person, right? That make sense? Does it make sense? Okay. A little bit of feedback is good. It lets me know that, this thing is working. The teaching and learning thing is actually functioning. Okay, what's the last one? Dude, come on. The three that I just mentioned was it value adjustive? Is that what they called it, Amanpreet? Oh, value expression. By expressing your values, you kind of let the world know who you are, and you kind of confirm who you are for yourself by saying what you believe, right? Fourth one. Ooh, it's like pulling teeth. Okay, I'm gonna wait. Ego defensive function. What's that about?
The attitude that protects our ego.
Yeah, an attitude that protects our ego. So sometimes we kind of look down or criticize people to make ourselves feel good. Has anyone ever done that? Has anyone ever even in your head, criticize someone else to kind of make you feel a little better? Come on. You've all done it. We've all done it. I've done it. I'm not proud of it.
Yourself feel better, maybe to like before we approach somebody.
Well, I'm talking about in your head. I'm not talking about saying something to someone out loud, but at least in your head, have you done it?
Yeah.
We've all done it, right?
Not to make myself feel better, just
But did it make you feel better?
I mean, not really.
Not really. Okay, maybe not. But I have definitely done this. I'm not proud of it. I haven't done it out loud. I've done it up here. But yeah, I think we've all naturally do this, and we kind of, look at other people and judge them so that we feel better, right? We defend our ego. That kind of happens in Mean Girls, doesn't it? Does that happen in Mean Girls? What's that? Or in a person's head.
I love your skirts.
Yeah.
Your bracelet's the worst.
Yeah, Regina was doing that, right? Oh, I love your skirt. I love your bracelet. But then she's like, oh, that's so ugly, right? So in a way, she's judging that person, right? And probably making herself feel like she's more fashionable, right? That other girl, ugh, horrible, right? And Katie does it too, right? Remember the last question at the competition? And she says, she has all those critical comments about the other contestant. And then she's like, wait a minute, calling someone else fat won't make you skinnier, right? Calling someone else ugly won't make you prettier, right? And it's true, but sometimes we do that anyway, right? Without even noticing. So they're saying here that one of the functions of prejudice is to make ourselves feel better because we judge other people as not as good. Again, none of this is desirable or right, but sometimes it's what we do, right? What's this thing? Tajfel's social identity theory. You'll have to help me because I think I need a reminder on this one. Oh, no, I don't. But still tell me what it is. Tajfel's social identity theory. What is the deal? Tell me what it is, what it means. Who's Tajfel? No, don't tell me that. I don't care. I just care about their theory. I don't care about who they are. Tajfel's social identity theory.
What I'm understanding is,
Yes. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear what you understand. Tell me, Nasra, please.
so if I want to feel better about myself, like positive self-image, I'd like categorize people, and like, oh, this person goes there and that person goes there.
I don't know. Give me a little more. I'm not sure if you're on the right track or not.
I don't know what I've already given.
It does have to do with kind of feeling better. It does have to do with kind of feeling better or feeling good about ourselves.
Like to get a positive self-image.
Okay, to get a positive self-image, right? To improve how we view ourselves, we want to be a member of a group that's also good, right? Am I on the right track here? Okay. So, are you sure? You sure? I could be lying to you. So, in order to make ourselves feel good, we want to be part of a group that also is seen as good as well, right? Does that make sense? Okay. So, think about the plastics and think about Gretchen, right? Gretchen wanted to be part of the plastics even when she was being treated like crap by Regina. Why? Because of her identity, right? Everyone looked up to the plastics, right? Everyone thought the plastics were high school royalty. And so if she's part of the plastics, she's high school royalty as well, right? And so we get a little bit of a boost. We get to feel better about ourselves if we're part of a group that everyone feels good about as well, right? It's like being part of the winning team, right? Everyone wants to be on the winning team because that means you're a winner too, right? Gretchen wants to be part of the plastics because everybody loves the, well, maybe they don't love them. Everyone kind of bows down to the plastics. And so she likes that everyone bows down to her as well, right? So we want to be a member of a group that is positively viewed, positively regarded, right? Nobody wants to be on the losing team, right? Did you have a question? You looked slightly, your face was slightly questioning. No? Yeah. No? Okay, you're good. I have another question for you. Would you like to take a break?
Yes.
You've been on break for a little while, I think. Okay, let's
I'll answer this question.
let's take 10 minutes break. Come back. We'll answer the last question, and then we'll move on and talk about some other things. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, and we are back. So, talked about prejudice and stereotypes and discrimination and the functions of prejudice and, the kind of reasons why they might exist, or at least according to sociologists. We talked about the idea that people like to be part of a group that has a positive, are seen positively in society, because that means if you're part of that group, then you get a little boost out of that too. What do they say some potential solutions are to reduce prejudice? How do we reduce prejudice? Reverse stereotypes, or just create a new stereotype?
Yeah, like they mentioned something with if you watch a movie with a positive stereotype, you could like kind of forget about negative stereotypes about that group of people.
Right. Actually, we heard about that yesterday in the video we watched, right? We watched, in Comparative Cultures, we watched a TED Talk with Jonathan Gottschall, the author of The Storytelling Animal. And he said that very thing, right? He said that media can actually change people's prejudicial ideas. And his example was a show called Will and Grace that had a couple of gay characters in it, and those characters were treated, he said, in a non-judgmental way. And what you saw is, as that show was more watched and became more popular, people's attitudes toward homosexuality started to shift, right? And they started to view homosexuality more positively, right? So yeah, media can have a role to play here in presenting people who are stereotyped, presenting them in kind of a non-judgmental way, and people can be influenced by those social messages, right? What are some other potential solutions to reduce prejudice?
Sure, asking as they walk in.
I am asking you as you walk in. You too, Daniel. What are some potential solutions to reduce prejudice?
Me too.
Nothing happened. I'm just asking the question. What are potential solutions? So media can sort of combat stereotypes by showing people maybe in a more realistic light, or showing people in a non-judgmental way. What else?
What do you mean of potential?
What do I mean? Like they're not like absolutely certain solutions, but they might help. They might work.
Integrate two groups of people together.
Right. So integrating people together is a good start, right? If you have a negative prejudice towards dogs and you never interact with any dogs, is your prejudice likely to change? No, you'll just hold on to it forever and ever and ever if you never interact with any dogs. And so we should, if you have a negative prejudice towards dogs, maybe we should try to get you together with some dogs, right? So maybe you can start to experience that, oh, not all dogs are bad. Some dogs are good, right? But what else? There's more to that. We can't just mix people together. That's part of it. That's helpful, but there's more. There's more to that.
It's hard because it's a mentality, like it's all personal. Like with prejudice, like I don't know the actual word is. It's like it's your mentality.
Yeah.
You're the one who's thinking, oh.
Yes, you're the one who's thinking it, right? So these are individually held, but they're also sort of common throughout society, right? And so again, we might not, things might work a little differently for everybody, but we know that if we have a prejudice that a lot of people hold or know about, how can we work to change it in general?
Equalize the power status between two groups and mix them together.
Sure, we can try to equalize the power status, right? And so I think the example they give in the article is that, if you're looking at, say, Black Americans and white Americans, you should integrate them. You should get them together, right? But you can't just get them together in a way that reinforces the power difference, right? So, you know, not today, but decades and decades ago, yeah, a lot of white people had black people working in their houses as maids or butlers or help of some, you know, nannies. And, you know, that's integration. People are integrated, but they're integrated in a way that reinforces the power structure, right? The white people are still the masters. The black people are still the servants of them. So that's no good. That doesn't help, right? We need to try to put these people on some sort of equal footing, right? Together, but also equal. And maybe a third part of that the article mentions. We want to get people together. We want to get them together in a way that doesn't reproduce the social inequality that already exists. And and having them work together to achieve a common goal, right? If they cooperate, everybody wins, right? And I would say that this is, if I, you know, you might disagree with me here, but I would say this is kind of the challenge of a country like Canada, because Canada is full of all kinds of different people, right? We have people from around the world, different races, ethnicities, religions, cultures, languages, genders, sexualities, ages, right? All of these different people are in this country called Canada, and we kind of need everybody to cooperate and work together, right? That's how Canada as a country is going to succeed. So Canada kind of has to identify goals that everyone is interested in, right? Even though we're all different and we come from different backgrounds and we might look at things differently, what are some common goals that we can agree on and that we can all say that, yeah, we want to achieve that, right? And that's what's going to hold us together, right? Here in Canada, we're not all the same. Like, we're not, you know, it's not like we're well, this is not true, but it's not like we're, say, Germans and everyone is, you know, in Germany being German together, right? We're a much more diverse group here in Canada. So what's going to hold us together and keep us cooperating? Well, hopefully a set of shared goals, right? Things that we can achieve and things that we all want to achieve if we work together, right? Anything else that comes to mind? Reducing prejudice? I don't think the article mentions anything else, but we could say education, right? Education is important, right? Teaching people is important. Anything else that can come to mind? No? Okay. I'll ask you that question again, but later in a more complicated way. Okay. So we've talked about stereotypes. I won't go through this again. And prejudice, I won't go through that again. And discrimination, I won't go through. I won't go through it again because that's actually yesterday's slideshow. Let's go back to where we were, which is today's slideshow. One of the things I'll point out about prejudices and prejudicial ideas is that prejudices vary over time, right? And often we have prejudices that we hold today that people feel very, very comfortable expressing in public, right? And yet there are other prejudices that you wouldn't, right? So let's say you had a prejudice against Black Americans. Let's say you were an American and you just didn't like Black people for whatever reason, right? Would you express that in public?
Depends on which state you're in.
It depends on which state you're in. Let's say you're in California. Would you express that? Is that a socially acceptable thing to express? It is not, right? And so if you held that prejudice against Black Americans, if you were at all, you know, socially savvy, you would not express it because it's not socially sanctioned, it's not socially approved, right? But some people do, but if you went back a few decades, you would see people very comfortable expressing their anti-Black prejudice in public. And part of the reason why they were is because they felt it was actual fact. And I don't have the video here, and I maybe I should have shown it to you, but it's probably not worth the time. But it's a video interviewing a few people from a town called Levittown, which I think it's in Pennsylvania. And it was one of these like new suburbs that was built in the 1950s or 60s. And so, you know, nice houses with the white picket fences and the yards, very nice suburb, all white, okay? Everybody living there are white people. And then one day, a black family moved in, okay? So a husband and his wife and I think 2 or 3 kids moved into the neighborhood. And some of the neighbors were very uncomfortable with the idea that this black family was going to live in their neighborhood. And there's one woman they interview, and she's worried about property values. She was worried about crime. She was worried about trouble. She was concerned that there would be social mixing. She felt that, you know, this black family shouldn't just barge in there. They should, you know, they need to earn it kind of thing, even though I think the husband and wife were engineers or something like that, so they could clearly afford a home in this neighborhood. But she felt very comfortable expressing these things that nowadays, like, you know, unless you were a hardcore racist, you would not say, right? But again, she felt comfortable expressing these things because she felt they were true. She felt that black people were in some way less than her. She felt that somehow they would cause trouble in a way that white people somehow would not, right? And so she felt these things were true, and she expressed them that way. And so sometimes people will feel very comfortable expressing prejudices when they feel they are based in truth, right? It's like, oh, it's not me, it's just that this is true, right? And so, but we do that today as well, but we need to recognize the prejudices for what they are. And so maybe one example I can give you here is the prejudice that exists against people who are overweight, and particularly against women who are overweight. And so this is a societal prejudice, and again, I'm not accusing anyone here of holding that prejudice, but this is kind of a societal prejudice. And so people often feel very comfortable criticizing and insulting people, and as particularly women, but just people in general, who are overweight. And often this is kind of hidden behind kind of a belief in the stereotypes about overweight people. And so I'll kind of start with this example here. And so this was the cover of Cosmo not long ago, October 2018. Okay, so a few years ago. And on the cover was this model, Tess Holliday. Okay, so Tess was on the cover here. Does anyone read Cosmo? I didn't think so, but it is more of a women's magazine, but it's okay to read it if you want to. But you're all probably too young to read anything like tangible. It's probably all online. Cosmo's a popular magazine. It's been around for decades. Yeah, like I'm guessing it probably might have even started in the 30s and 40s, but I don't know for sure. Magazines kind of grew in popularity in the 1940s or so. But Cosmo's been around forever and ever and ever. It's very popular. Mostly for women, lots of style and beauty and lifestyle advice and articles, things like that. But who do we usually see on the cover of Cosmo?
Very slim women.
Yeah, very, very slim women, right? Mostly models or actresses, movie stars. That's usually who we see on the cover of Cosmo. And so this one caused a stir because obviously Tess Holliday, who is a model, Tess is not that, right? She's not super skinny like basically every cover model has been. And so there was, interestingly, a lot of reaction to her being on the cover. And here's Piers Morgan here with his tweet saying, as Britain battles an ever-worsening obesity crisis, this is the new cover of Cosmo. Apparently, we're supposed to view it as a huge step forward for body positivity. What a load of old baloney. Which means he is rude. He is rude in general. What a load of old baloney. This cover is just as dangerous and misguided as celebrating size 0 models. So here's Tess on the cover, and Piers Morgan has felt very comfortable saying, this is a shame, this is shameful, Cosmo should be ashamed, Tess should be ashamed, you know, this is awful and dangerous, right? What's that? Why do you think he's so? Let's talk about why he's saying it. So Nasra, you said because he's pretty rude in general in his comments. That's fair to say, and that's true. What else is he? What's his justification for criticizing this?
He thinks that seeing that an overweight girl would encourage people that, oh, it's okay to be fat and like hence the UK obesity.
Right, and so again, there's a little bit of a grain of truth here, right? Because if you are significantly overweight, there are health risks associated with that, right? It's harder on your joints, it's harder on your circulatory system. You know, you may or may not be at risk for type 2 diabetes. There's health risks that are connected to being overweight, not particularly in a perfectly cause and effect kind of way. The body is a complicated machine, but there are health risks associated with being overweight for sure. But, you know, is he really concerned about Tess's health? I don't know that he is.
I think he's talking about the same danger of promoting overly skinny model.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think people will imitate that.
Well, and that's true, right? There is a, you know, there's a very strong concern with being underweight as well, right? Because we see lots of really slim, really skinny girls, you know, doing modeling and showing up in movies, but, you know, not all women are built like that, right? And it's unreasonable to expect that, you know, every woman can look like, I don't know, name a women fashion model for me. Who? Oh yeah, so Gigi Hadid. It's not reasonable to expect every woman to be able to look like that, right? All of our bodies are built differently. Our skeletal system is built differently. The way we, you know, the way our muscles are developed, the shape of us, the way, you know, where we have fat and our ability to build fat cells. All of these things vary between people, and so, you know, you can't hold up Gigi Hadid and say this is the ideal woman and expect women to look like her, because not everyone can, right? Everyone's built a little bit differently. So yeah, there's definitely a danger there, particularly when young women are not eating nutritiously, when they're, you know, like in Mean Girls, the girls who don't eat at all and they're all sharing a Diet Coke. That's not healthy, that's not good. But I don't know. Like I question his motives here. You know, is he really concerned, or is he criticizing her because she's overweight and he expects to see, you know, a healthy or slim model? It's difficult to kind of intuit his intent here, right?
Obviously just body shaming.
Yeah, and
So obvious.
and if it's not obvious, then, you know, there's other, sorry, where's my other pictures? Oh shoot, where are my other pictures? Yeah, I think we can pretty easily find other evidence of very clear body shaming. And
He's overweight.
is he? I've never seen him, to be honest.
He's really like not healthy. He's not looking good at all.
Interesting. And so, but again, like why, I had originally in my PowerPoint here, I had a few more pictures of much more clear fat shaming comments or body shaming comments. But yeah, why do people feel so comfortable fat shaming people? Yeah, and I think part of the answer is that because they feel it's true, right? And we talked about this the other day. What are some of our stereotypes or prejudicial ideas about people who are overweight? What are they? They're lazy, they don't have any self-control. What else? Maybe they're stupid, right? If you look at movies and television, lots of people who are overweight are kind of stupid, right? Do you know who Kevin James is? He was Paul Blart Mall Cop, among other things. Yeah, he's kind of, they kind of play up that because he's kind of overweight and he's ridiculous, right? He's always falling over things and he's kind of dumb. And so we kind of connect this stereotype in a way that people who are overweight, are lazy, they have no self-control, they're maybe not that smart, maybe they don't care about their health, right? They'll just eat whatever and, they're irresponsible, right? We have all these stereotypical ideas circulating around, and so it's very easy to express a prejudice here and then hide behind it and say, well, I'm concerned about health, right? And I feel like that's what Piers Morgan is doing. He's hiding behind, the legitimate statement that, yeah, in some cases, if you're carrying extra body fat, that can make you more susceptible to other health problems. Sometimes, right? Every body is different. We all store fat differently. Some people who don't store a lot of body fat are actually really unhealthy because they eat a lot of garbage, but the way their body works, they don't actually put on fat. And I know we probably all know people like this who can just eat whatever they want and they don't seem to gain any weight, and we all hate them. But I'm just teasing. But there's a lot of reasons why someone might be overweight, and if they are, they might be more predisposed to other health problems. But I don't think that's what's going on. I don't hear Piers Morgan saying, gee, Tess Holliday is on the cover. She looks really confident in her body, which is great. But I hope she's staying healthy, right? I hope she's, looking after her nutrition and getting enough exercise and sleep, and I hope she's healthy.
It wouldn't be as obvious if he was more polite.
Well, it wouldn't be as obvious if he was more polite, but also if he was more polite, maybe he wouldn't be expressing that prejudice.
No, but as if like a skinnier model would like the obesity, he mentioned the obesity levels increasing. As if a skinny model, everybody would be like, oh yeah, let me put down the donuts. That doesn't work.
No, and also is the solution to, if there is an obesity crisis in the UK, which I think there certainly is in the United States as well, is the solution to that criticizing Tess and saying, wow, your body is really unattractive to me, therefore I feel it's okay to criticize you in the name of public health? I don't know. And again, it's tough to know what his intent was and what he's thinking, but it's also possible that he thinks he's expressing, he thinks he's talking about health, but maybe he's just having a reaction to Tess's body.
Because he's entitled. No offense to men, but they come with so much entitlement. What makes him think he can comment on a woman's body? He doesn't know anything about it.
Yeah, so the comment is, is there's a lot of entitlement here, right? What makes Piers Morgan think that, he's allowed to critique this woman's body, right? What makes him think that it's his job to step up and tell her what's wrong with her, right? And it's interesting because I think you can see some of that entitlement in a lot of places, but I'm immediately I start thinking about beauty contests, right? And so have we all seen a beauty contest like Miss America or Miss World or whatever? Seen those, right? Or just kind of, you're aware of them at least? Are we aware of these? Yeah. So what happens? Well, a bunch of women parade around the stage in, fancy dresses and sometimes swimsuits, and a bunch of men judge them, right? And it's very interesting to think not only, that's a very weird thing to do, but also does the opposite exist?
No. Yeah.
Where a bunch of men parade around and a bunch of women judge them?
No. Yes.
Yeah.
No, yes,
Yeah?
really,
Yeah.
Really?
They are.
don't think so.
The male beauty contest. Beauty contest.
I've never seen one. There's
So
there's definitely like bodybuilding
Yeah.
competitions, but that's a little,
Allowed to that.
yeah, and that's a little different, right? That's more about, like building muscle in the body, and they're kind of judging, on a different, a different set of criteria, right? Whereas the beauty pageant is more like, how hot are you, right? That's the question that's being asked, right? Who's the hottest of these 10 women or 100 women? But isn't it very interesting that the same doesn't exist for men? There's no contest where men parade around the stage and women judge them.
I have a question.
Yes.
Because a prejudice that is considered acceptable for society is viewed as a fact, is the minoritized group feel like they're being suffered or something?
Okay, so the idea here is that when these prejudices are being expressed because people believe them to be true or to be factual, does the minoritized group feel, what did you say?
I think feel left out, offended, something like that.
Does the minoritized group feel left out or offended? Okay, well, we have a few women here in the room, and women are officially the minoritized group here. So I know you don't speak for all women in all places, but can you give us a bit of a context to that question? Can you answer that question in some way? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but does this process of men judging women's bodies, how do you feel about that? And I think you said it before, but you can say it again.
See, the thing is why. That's the question here is, why do men what makes men feel comfortable to put themselves in a position to judge people? Like, especially women, you don't know what the beauty standards are. You don't know what we had to do to look like this. You don't know anything, period. And they're probably all like overweight and old anyway.
Yeah. So why is I can sense a little bit of anger and frustration in your response, and those are I think those are valid. Not that you need validation from a man, but I'm just saying I hear what you're saying. But that is the question, right? Why do men feel okay, or that feel it's their right to criticize what this woman looks like, especially because she's not even on the cover of a men's magazine, right? This is, men are not their target market, right? This is a magazine for women, right? And I don't know. I don't know how women would look at this cover and perceive it and think about it. I don't really know.
I thought, wow, I love that color green. And she was like, wow, I love her tattoos.
Yeah.
I think,
It looks really, it's really striking, right? With her red hair and the green dress and the tattoos, and yeah, she's got good skin for tattoos as well, because she doesn't have really dark skin, so the colors and the lines really, they're sharp, they really pop. Yeah.
People like Pierce who set us back.
It's people,
We need to direct treat him.
right.
I feel like women, they don't care about his opinion.
We don't
Like,
care. Nobody asked him.
if
He's
he
saying this
posts that-
unprovoked.
Yeah, if he posts that, like, I don't think women are gonna be, oh, I hate my body now.
He'd be like, shut up.
Yeah, like,
But this is what I ask you is, and for online people, the comment is, nobody asked this guy. Nobody cares about his opinion. Women aren't listening to him, but which is all true, right? Who cares what this guy thinks? But does his expressing of it, especially because he's got a lot of followers, I don't know how many, but probably a lot, is it damaging anyway? Does it influence people's prejudices and stereotypes and the entitlement, what they feel is acceptable to say and do?
Yeah, and I feel like because of his following too, it kind of feeds into his ego. That like that's what makes him think that he can post stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because he's like, oh, a lot of people will agree with me.
They are probably people just like him or agree with him. But there's a million more commenting like, no, like,
Yeah, maybe I'll share this with you just really quickly in regard, and because, again, we talked about this before, the positionality thing and the experience of being in different social groups in society. There's different experiences, and I have two experiences that, for me anyway, and women, you can disagree with me here, that almost gave me a little window into the experience of women. One of them was I was in Russia one time. I did my grad work in Russia. And I hopped into this little minibus, like it's a little van minibus thing. And across from me was sitting this young woman. Okay, she's a pretty young woman. She was sitting there, and she gave me the scan, right? She was like, she checked me out, okay? And I'm not saying this to brag or anything, but the thing is, like, it never happens, right? Because here in the West, women check men out, but they don't do it so obviously. And so when it happened, I was like, yeah, all right. So I felt really like, I'm cool, right? I felt really good about it. But at the same time, I also became immediately self-conscious, right? I was like, oh my God, did I really dress well enough today? Is there any stains on my jeans? Is my hair okay? Suddenly I became very self-conscious about my appearance in a way that I hadn't been all day. And then this one, very clear look, and suddenly I was like, oh God, right? And that was in a case where, this woman was, she was very attractive, right? So it was nice to be checked out by her because I thought she was cute too. But also imagine that the person checking you out might not be someone that you think is cute, right? They might be someone that you are really not interested in, right? They might be old or unattractive to you in some way, or they might be big and scary, right? That's a different experience. The second experience I'll give you is, oh shoot, what was it? Oh, I used to have a colleague years ago, and the colleague was gay, which is fine, but it contextualizes the story. And he would always comment on how I was dressed. Like every day, he would tell me, "Oh yeah, that looks really nice," and and I wasn't upset by his sexuality. Like I don't mind if a gay guy finds me attractive. It's like, yeah, thanks. Like that makes me feel good, even though I'm not gay, but I'm like, hey, thanks. But like it was so consistent that I was like, stop looking at me. Like stop checking me out. Like it's a little much, right? Like I don't want your opinion all the time of how I look. I don't want that from you, right? And so again, these are kind of small incidents, but it almost gave me into a little window into maybe the world of women where their appearance is so much up for public comment. And here we see a very clear example of Piers Morgan thought it was his, that he was perfectly able to say to the world how disgusted or offended he was at Tess's inclusion on the cover, right? And so I wonder how Tess felt about that comment, right? Because it probably took, I would suspect it takes a lot of courage to be on the Cosmo cover regardless of what you look like. But if you look like someone who doesn't fit into, society's ideal woman stereotype, I suspect it might have been a lot more, she might have required a lot more courage, right? And yet Piers didn't see that. No, he was like, oh, this is just so awful. But I'm just concerned about public health, right? Okay, that was good, but we're kind of out of time. Thank you all. That was really enjoyable talking about that, even though it's, prejudice and it's not good. Fat shaming is not good. But it was a good conversation. I hope you have a great weekend. I'll see you on Monday, or some of you I'll see you in 20 minutes, okay? So have a good weekend, guys. See you Monday.